Everyone, this is a 10 of Plutonic Planes or Mario, and I have Joel with me here today. And it's exciting to have Joel. We did a show on his site a couple weeks ago, and Joel has a project going on right now. He's going to share with us a little about that, and then we're going to get into some of the things that he shared with me initially when we first started working together, and especially about sleep, which is really intense. One thing, Joel, how do you see me on your screen? Is it me big?
Yeah.
How do I get it so it was like with you and us? Like when you talk, the screen you just we just see you, and when I talk, we just see me. How do we do that? Do you know?
In view, you hit speaker instead of gallery. It
Okay,
should be your upper right corner.
I'm gonna go to gallery, then I'm gonna go to speaker. It was on speaker, but I don't see it going back and forth.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
think the recording does though.
Okay. Okay, then maybe it's fine.
On speaker, then I think you're good.
Okay, we'll trust that. So
Cool.
share with us, Joel, share with us a little what you're up to and about the group you have going right now, if you would.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. Appreciate you having me on. It's called Dreaming Our Purpose, and we're meeting, you know, for about 9 sessions, and they're 3 hours long. It's about shamanic dreaming arts, really covering a lot of Castaneda material and breaking it down, kind of a deeper dive into the magical passes, the recapitulation. Um, it's an opportunity to really discuss the four natural enemies of man, according to the Castaneda books, which is fear, clarity, power, and old age. And then we're adding like conception and death. So conception in the beginning, then fear, clarity, power, old age, and then death. And we're just going to be working through those subjects pretty intensely as far as like Toltec perspectives. But the movements really bring, when you have a lot of people doing these shamanic movements together, there's just kind of like waves of energy, and lots of silence that happens. So it's a really cool thing. People are still welcome to join. If feel free to reach out if you're interested. We've done one class, but there's 8 more, and it goes until mid-April. And at sliding scale, it's fairly affordable, and happy to work with people on payments and stuff. And yeah, so I'm really excited to be doing that. It's the first time I've been holding that kind of space, and it got a pretty large group of people, and it's a lot of really powerful dreamers I've been working with one-on-one, and they're all getting to meet each other, and it's kind of like bringing in a bunch of mirrors to reflect each other, and it's like, we're all gonna learn so much from each other. Just so yeah, thanks, man.
What days are you doing it, Joel?
Yeah, so it's the first 3 Tuesdays of February, the 6th, the 13th, and the 20th, and then the first 3 Tuesdays of March, and then the first two Tuesdays of April. So we take little breaks toward the end of the month to kind of integrate. But there's also a Telegram channel where we're all communicating with each other, a private Telegram group. And so just the discussions in there have been really incredible. A lot of really powerful dreamers have joined the group. So it's fascinating to hear their feedback and stories of what they've been through throughout their life, and everyone's just getting to know each other, and it's awesome.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah,
So
man.
I told Joel I wanted to talk a little about some theme that we first engaged when we connected, and that was the involvement around sleep, around what really happens, or what our assessment is of what happens, what we feel, what we experience when we go to sleep. What is this sleep process? Why do we have it? And one of the things that Joel told me to examine was to try and get to that interstitial space between sleep and dreaming, to not quite fall asleep, but not quite be awake, but find this kind of middle zone. And the times that I practiced it, I had mentioned to Joel that while I was doing such practices, there would be I would have this moment, and it was like a moment before the sledgehammer was gonna hit me in the head, and I could feel it coming, and then I could almost feel myself being knocked out. Now, of course, it's really hard for us to nail down a precise moment, when we go to sleep, because how do we know when we're in sleep? We can't really recall that moment. It's far away because
Yeah.
it's hours until we wake up, and it was a long time ago. But I remember sharing with with Joel about like how it felt like I couldn't stay awake, like no matter what I did. It was just like something was putting me out. Something was just knocking me out. And yeah, share a little, Joel, about what you had. Well, whatever you want around that.
Yeah, no, it's such a cool subject, and I'm glad you had the courage to sort of play with it. It's kind of a confronting concept, and um, I find this, I go through the same thing that you went through. It's a very challenging thing to try to stay in that in-between state, but there's so much benefit to being able to do so. And there's a way to enter dreaming through silence while awake. So we can enter sleep without losing consciousness in the way that we typically do when we sleep. And it's a very unique way of living. And this is what Toltec strive to do, is to live 24 hours a day, to not be taken out. And so like I think what's happening is, we as the Toltecs say, that there's a predator who has lent us its mind. And so as much as we want to try to free ourselves from hypnosis, we have a companion for life. It's not something you can just get rid of. And so especially comes up during situations like this, where you're trying to regain control of your natural self and to go into your natural mind. And as you start to gain access to that, that hypnosis comes in really strong to try to make sure that you don't gain access to that, because we're all being kept in place so that we can be controlled. And if enough people start coming out of that hypnosis, then this parasitic force won't be able to control humanity in the way that it does. So there's great pressure on those of us who are, seeking freedom as a means to not discover it. Right. So the program's very advanced. As soon as you come out of victimhood, it's going to try to control you in another way by convincing you that you're victorious, or that you're powerful, or build your ego up. So it's like everybody's being manipulated. It doesn't matter where you are. And that's a really disturbing aspect. But you see it with materialism. People are just, once they start gaining income or whatever, or power or status, it's really hard for them to walk away from it, even though it's starting to take over their life.
Yeah, it becomes a narcotic, a drug of
Yeah.
sorts.
But yeah, there's a very cool benefits to staying in that in-between state. You can get just as much rest as you would if you were all the way asleep, because you're shutting your whole body down, and it's getting to like completely hang out in this really incredible healing space. Right? So you could like set up a grid to where you have like stones or crystals or something creating a grid around your sleep, and it can like give you all this energy so that you really become conscious in your dreams. But in a way, you're sort of inviting things to come challenge that too. Like the more you make a big deal about things, the more you get noticed. So I'm trying to just be at peace with where I'm at and not trying to force any of it, but continue to build dreaming attention and really, play with it. And so darkroom dreaming, sort of similar, or recapitulating in the dark. It's like you get into this zone where you're really getting a lot done. And then all of a sudden you're like, you wake up hours later, you're like, what happened? I was right there, but I just got put out. Like, why would I leave that? That was the juice. That was right where I wanted to be. And I wake up hours later, like, how did I get put out when I was so focused on staying awake? Right. So the dark room dreaming is incredible, but you're in the dark, and the dark can just sort of swallow you and you fall into the abyss of sleep. So shamans do strange things like drink caffeine before bed, like a lot of it, or they'll try to sleep upright. Initially learning how to do dreaming ideally is done pretty much upright. So as soon as your head nods, you wake
Right.
back up and you
Right.
don't spend too much time asleep. Or shamans will develop, like they'll use like dreaming positions, like that are kind of uncomfortable, like yoga, where you're like holding a pose. But then you go into dreaming, and that way you won't fully fall asleep, because the pose is like testing your body. It's pushing it to these limits. And so it allows you to sort of have to stay awake because of the intensity of the position you're in. You know, when I would go to these workshops where we do magical passes for days and days and days, I wouldn't be able to sleep for days and days and days afterwards because I got so altered. And so there's a benefit to the magical passes as well as a means to keep yourself having a lot of energy. And then the reason I couldn't fall asleep was because it felt like I was going to fall off a cliff every time I'd start to fall asleep. It was just like this, it was just too big of a drop because my energy had gotten so sort of horizontal and vertical. And anyways, so yeah, there's just so many different things to play with. Shamans, that's what they talk about, is living at least being conscious 23 or 24 hours a day if possible. If you recapitulate enough, you'll get your dreaming attention back to the point that you have a lot more say over when you drop into deep sleep or not. I do know a man who was able to shed the hypnosis for about 40 hours, like where he was able to shake this predator off of his energy system, but he couldn't walk. That's how much we're under hypnosis, is that this force is like our autopilot. It's what allows us to do all kinds of things like build skyscrapers and design cities, drive at 100 miles an hour without hitting each other. You know, it's like that. It's that weird sort of that part of our mind that's very efficient in certain areas. So because we're so used to it, to come out of hypnosis completely is almost dysfunctional for a period of time. So we need more and more people to be able to do these things, not just one or two guys that are trying to break free. It's going to require like large groups over long periods of time. And that's what the Toltec said. It's we would come to a point where sorcery and shamanism would need to be understood in order for humanity to evolve and not perish. So if we as a species don't start to implement and remember our magical heritage, then this whole construct would just collapse in on itself. It doesn't mean we wouldn't find ourselves in another situation, but to preserve what we have here requires that we wake up and remember and sort of come out of this deep sleep. Basically, even this dream that we think we're awake in, are we really awake? Like, you know, the whole point of dreams at night is you think it's just this dream. You're in a deep dream and all this weird shit's happening, but we don't realize it's a dream. We keep behaving as if it's just daily life. And the trick is to notice how weird the dream is getting and realize this must be a dream. And then wake up in the dream. And that's when you want to like look at your hands to
Yeah, yeah.
verify, do
Reminds me of
something, you know, to try to acknowledge that. And from there, you know, that's where the dreaming gates start to open up. You can start to do more and more in dream time.
yeah, these practices that Joel's talking about is these are all also astral travel exercises where we're doing something during the day so much that we're doing it in our sleep. I remember when I was deep into a very specific qigong practice, and it was just a movement. It was just like sun movement, bringing in the sun or the through my field.
Yep.
And I remember I would do it every day so long that eventually I was just doing it in my sleep.
Wow. Yes.
And that begins that differentiate that lack of differentiation. Okay, which is real? You know, am I doing this in the dream space, or am I doing this in reality, or where am I? You know, that's what you're talking about, is bringing that awareness to both worlds equivalently, because like not one world is, or one world is not the other. These are worlds that were, one of them we're asleep in. Well, probably both. And we're not realizing the magic of this world. And we're
Yes.
sleeping in this one. And if we're not remembering our dreams, in a way where we're waking up in our dreams to exert some awareness, then we're asleep in both places.
For sure.
And then to touch on what you said earlier, I remember in my 20s when I got into meditation really deep at some point, and it was a specific type, I think it was called jhanas. It was a specific type of Buddhist meditation, and my whole body would fill with energy, and I would feel that, and I'd be going, well, it doesn't say anything about this. Let me, figure what the hell's going on. And I remember that at some point, just a crisis came about, and I wasn't able to. Um, you're frozen a little there. Hopefully, we can. There you go.
Okay.
But
Yep.
you heard what I was
Agreed.
saying. Yeah, like immediately when I was getting to these like higher states of awareness, immediately a crisis came about in my life, and I just stopped doing it.
Yep. Exactly.
Always.
Yeah, it's really well designed that way to, and it's important for people to realize that you go to make really significant changes in your life, like really positive ones, you're going to be challenged. And as long as you can expect that challenge to come in, then you won't necessarily overreact. Because it's like, okay, I know something's gonna come in to try to, some life event will play out because I'm about to cross a threshold. And so crossing the threshold anyways, even though this thing has happened, it will be very powerfully effective. Because our mind tells us, oh, I can't now, or whatever, I can't do this thing I was going to do, but
Right.
actually you probably can. You're just compartmentalizing, like the ego is it's just telling you it can't. As there's all this limitation that we create in our minds that's not necessarily accurate. It's tricky to work through that stuff and be honest about the way in which we limit our opportunity through the limitation of perspective.
When a crisis comes about, we feel like we need to make all this room in our controlled mind, right? Oh,
Yeah.
now I have to deal with this issue, so I need to put all my mental focus on it. And it's
Yep.
like, that's not the way to go at all. The way to go is with your authority, whatever that is, and then just, keep to your path, keep to your practices, as best you can.
For
Or
sure.
is correct. But yeah, well said. Thanks for all that. That's all very well shared and expressed. There's something about our ability to keep our keenness of awareness, and when we lose it, come back to it. Like,
Yes.
how do we arrive back? Because there's these traps, like you said, or these setups or these crises that come about once we cross the threshold. Or rather, as you said, even better, because these are challenges. These are everything we face. The flyers itself are oh, okay. I'm remembering something in the Sorcerer's Crossing book. So there's a part when Taisha is being taught by Clara, or no, I forgot her name, her teacher in the book. And she says the dichotomy is not between the mind and the body, but it's between the self and the double, the mind
Hmm.
and the double, the spirit and the double. It's something
Mm,
like that, I think. It's talking about it's it's attacking that false dichotomy of the body and the mind, and saying
right.
it's almost like she's saying that it's talking about the flyer's mind or that double. Is that what she's
Well,
getting?
the double would be the dreaming body, which is our more natural state. So, like, we're in a physical form, but it's actually an illusion. We're actually pure energy. We've manifested physicality. So, getting to know the difference between the two, like, is a real discovery process. Like, Taisha couldn't control her double because once you tap your energy body, then you start having the ability to do things that are terrifying to the physical. Like she was being taught to move from the kitchen to the living room without moving her physicality, just to biolocate. But she would overreact and like shoot through the house into other dimensions and like go way too far, and her system was too panicked. So the activation of the double is what shamans learn to do. And in fact, it's so advanced, you could learn to be in two places at once and nobody would know the difference. You can use your energy body and consolidate it and make it appear to be and be physical. You can have two places of access. And so if you were to go to sleep in a position and wake up in a dream and then go to sleep in that same physical position, it's called the twin positions, and then do that a third time, you would wake up at the fourth gate of dreaming and you would reach what's called your parallel being. And you would realize that that's the being that's been dreaming this dream that we're in right now. So this is a dream. And it's just about accessing that, which can help us understand that, so we can make full use of this vision or this dream, as well as the one that the parallel being is in. So it's I'd have to reread that part of what she said. There's so many gems in there, I don't remember them all, but yeah, I would be, I think what they're trying to point out is that there's so much more to us, and we've compartmentalized it as just like body, mind, soul, or like reincarnation and all these religious concepts that we've accepted that aren't accurate to our energetic configuration. And so in a way, we're sort of struggling between activating our astral self and being isolated to the physical. And it's just as dangerous. It's a very dangerous procedure to become fully active like Toltecs do, because you could end up losing your marbles, right? So in some ways, it's okay that our shields are the way they are and that the flyers are here and the whole thing. It's actually a rite of passage that's necessary and set up so that it's not easy to get to where we would like to go, so that we really earn our way there. Otherwise, if it was just accessible, it would actually be kind of like chaos. It would just be like old school sorcery where everybody it's a different kind of war than we're in here in this physical world.
So I just want to share so many equivalences. So there's a short film, maybe 15-minute film that came out in the 50s by Maya Deren called Meshes in the Afternoon. And in the film, the main character goes to sleep over and over again and wakes up and dreams and wakes up in this position and that position. It's very, very interesting.
Oh.
Uh, there's also the novels by Kafka, especially The Castle, where the character falls asleep at the most inopportune moments.
Mhm.
It's so absurd and weird. But if you read it closely, the character's waking up in different frequencies of worlds.
Yeah.
And it then becomes really questionable. Where was he in the beginning? Was he ever in a real world? Was he
Mhm.
dreaming the whole time and then falling asleep in one to wake in another? Oh, it's
Oh,
so good. And of course, you have films that finally got like large blockbuster Hollywood films that finally got the clue on that, like The 13th Floor, which came out in 1999, where the characters are waking up on multiple levels and finding out their reality's false, or this one's false, then the next one's false, the next one's false. You know, it's the whole Russian doll idea. Like,
yep.
if this world's not real, then maybe the next one is. But then it's not, and it's not that none of them are real. It's that they're playing in all these capacities of their spirit, their double, their self, like you said initially, you know, we act as if this world, this everyday world is not dreamlike, but it is.
Yes, love it, dude. Yeah, it's so cool. The Toltecs refer to this as a phantom world. And that if you start to free yourself from the illusion of this realm being the only layer, that by coming out of that phantom perception, you're now interacting, you're going to, like we were saying earlier, where a crisis will happen or something will happen to stop your progression. It's the same concept that those that are agents of the phantom world or agents of the matrix, they will come out of the woodwork to attempt to entice you back into the comforts of domestication. Does that make sense? Like they serve as, like whether they realize it or not, the program operates in that way, that unconsciously or consciously the phantoms of the phantom world will attempt to corral you back into the sheep herd. So it gets really lonely for Toltecs to free themselves from hypnosis, because even their family members or people they think are very close with, their fear or whatever has a hold of them will then try to bring them back into becoming available as food to the predator.
Well, you remember that film? There was another film that shows this really well. It was with Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino, and Al Pacino played the devil, and
Yeah,
Charlie
devil's
Theron,
advocate.
Devil's Advocate, yeah. And the film is his whole struggle to break free
Yeah,
of the hypnotism of this kind of demiurgic control over his life. And we get to watch the movie. Our spirits are uplifted, and he wins the battle, only to be right at the end we see that he was got
yeah,
for another loop that we don't get to see, but we knew he was got at the end, when that character returns, and he returns to the beginning, or a new beginning. And yeah, and by what he says, he falls into another another battle. But it's hilarious because it is that kind of loop. It's not like Hollywood says. It's not like one big battle, the 2 hours is complete. You can go home, you know.
yeah.
You had your popcorn, you feel you've succeeded, the hero's journey, the quest is over. No,
Right.
no, it's a constant turning.
Yes, sir.
It's
Yeah,
like what's the next challenge, I mean, the whole idea of this realm of there being evil, there being good guys and bad guys, is really such a misnomer. We can't grow without challenge. We can't. Otherwise, I would just sit down and not work, and just enjoy good food. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't. Where would the impetus come from to actually? Um, it's like this. It's like the peace sayers, right? The people who love to wave the peace sign and everything's peace. There's no growth with peace.
exactly.
Peace is just stasis. You know
Totally.
that doesn't make any sense. Why,
Yeah,
why, why, why put your finger out and point to these governments creating wars? Like, what about the war inside of you
exactly.
that within you're ready to attack and go to war and bring out your emotional tanks of armor, and weaponry,
Yes. Yeah, I mean, in Aikido, they say the only enemy is within, and if there's no fight within you, if you've made, if you've found harmony through going through all the battles that the ego will offer, then it just manifests in a really powerful life in which really nothing can touch you. And you sort of, it's that informed field, and transforming your relationship with fear into power. And but death is that element. Toltecs say that death is the player and life is the arena. And that's what makes us act, is we feel our death. That's why, if you take too much ecstasy or whatever, you start to feel, like your body, something starts to happen, and it's your death letting you know that you're fucking with your chi, and it'll scare the shit out of you for a reason, so that hopefully you'll come out of that cycle. But it's when you're going to keep doing that, and you're going to keep robbing yourself of that serotonin, that you start to get really terrified, right? And it's when you stop listening, it's like you drop deeper and deeper into the unconscious phantom layers of just not really being willing to feel the impetus of death. So shamans say the whole point of this is to stop behaving as if we're immortal, because we act from a perception that is based on the flyer's mind. It's trying to tell us that we have all the time in the world, But this all really matters. If there's no reincarnation, then this is it. Right? There might be parallel lives where everything's happening simultaneously,
Yeah,
but
make
that doesn't,
it
yeah,
clear.
that just means that the more you evolve in this realm, in this layer, at this time, that's going to benefit all your other parallel lives equally. So we want to make use of this time and bring death in as an advisor. And the recapitulation will deliver that jolt to us. The more we recapitulate, the more we'll be conscious of that feminine force, death, and what she's telling us. And shamans say she's the only one that'll be honest with you. She's the only one that knows you. She's stalking you. She's waiting for a moment of weakness to take you out.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of literature about that, a lot of fairy tale style, or even in like the Sandman comic book series, the character of the Sandman, or I think it was Death. It was his sister Death, I think that character. Or even in other different series where the character would always be watching, or being watched by Death. And the moment would always be near, or the character might go down a different road or path or make a decision, and Death would go, oh, another day, you know.
Yep. Yep.
So it was able to embody, and literature's been able to embody that message that we're actually getting guidance all the time.
Yes.
And the question is, are we listening? Are we hearing that guidance? Because what you said rings so true. There's such it's almost a narcotic feeling sometimes when we're like, well, I could do whatever I choose in my life. I could go do this and I'm still going to be, and then of course something will show up to put you in fear, to let you know, no, that's not. Are you no, are you sure? Right? It's always choice. So it's kind of like, are you sure you want to do that? Here's the consequences. We'll give you a little taste.
Yeah, we're so fortunate that we have this advisor. And yeah, the hypnosis is real, man. So the more we come out of it, the more in tune we'll be with our bodily intuition. And that the death isn't talking to us through our mind, it's telling us through our body. It's we get hits, we feel the hair stands up on our back of our neck.
The gut drops, yeah, all kinds of stuff. That's our
Could
body.
be, yeah,
There's
it could go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say it could be physical fear where you like sense something's about to happen, like you're out on a hike with a bunch of people and you you feel something and you say, "Hey, let's all turn around, let's go somewhere else," and everyone feels the same, or it could be just, like a sense of something when somebody's about to drive off, like one of your family members and you just feel the need to go and stop them and give them a hug. It's we want to pay attention to every little impulse and follow them if possible, because you never know what could happen if somebody leaves the house at the wrong time.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting when you say that. It just reminded me of like so many instances of my own experiences where, because I made a decision, it feels mundane because nothing happened. And then, but I recall it as like an absurd circumstance where like I'll go for a walk and it's getting dark, right? And it's a long hike. And I'm like, I should turn around. And then I just keep going. And then all of a sudden, like it's a quick full body impulse, like, no, turn around, go. And then it's not a thought. It's just I turn around and I start walking back. Now nothing happens because I listen to the impulse. So I don't remember every circumstance because it's not scarred into me by some specific incident. But
Totally.
it's just a hit, and I just follow it. And it's weird, man, because it can happen in non-threatening circumstances too.
Yeah.
Like it happens all the time. I remember even recently, I had an intent to go to a specific place. I think it was like an event at night. No, it was just a wanting. It was just a wanting to be busy. And so I'm gonna go out to this place. So I got in my car and I went to go eat, and it just started reading a book and chilling, and I never got to the place. I never wanted to go. It was never it wasn't a real impulse. It was just the mind wanting
Yes.
to lose itself, or the serotonin wanting to be fed off by some predator, fed off of. And I just didn't do it. So, man, it's so interesting. And then some of us, like, this is an interesting human design thing. Those who have like a defined spleen are people that can be spontaneous sometimes. They'll still get their own whispers of like impulse of no, go, don't go. But with me, like, I find I usually need, if I'm going to do something with other people, like, I usually need plans. I need my mind or my body to be prepared for what's going
Yeah.
to occur. And even then, if it doesn't happen, it's fine. It doesn't happen. That's okay. Or if we change the plans, that's fine too. But if I have a set plan, it prepares my body in time. It's almost like my body has its own temporality. Like, it
Right.
needs to be informed. It's moving through time. And thus
Sure.
I distinguish it from that kind of flyer's mind, which is
Mm-hmm.
always trying to manipulate my own temporal flow
Mm-hmm.
or take it over. And so, yeah, so I wanted to share that because so many instances of me having a specific plan, and then with no nameable reason, I have an impulse to go in a different direction. And it's just what it is. It's not etched into my memory because nothing happens. Or or
Yes.
or nothing external happens.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a lot of people don't know how to listen to that part and they lose energy. So it's not always you're gonna die, but you might put yourself in a situation where you could get really drained, which sets a blueprint for you to get drained again next time and next time. And it's like we fall into these patterns, and so we need to stalk ourselves and get to know where we're predictable and where we're easy for death to take us out and start to become more magical in our thinking. And that means listening to the body instead of using the mind to run our lives. And so it's just, that's what impeccability is energy management that allows you to know, to be psychic, to be in tune. And so people that are very mental and very itinerary based with no ability to break free from that itinerary, like you go travel in another country and you're just a total tourist, you don't have any expansive consciousness about what you're observing. That's just a really easy person to sort of control, right? So the program uses, the flyers love those that are easy to control, and they may just keep them alive just for the benefit of feeding off of them so easily. But those that are less easy to control, death becomes a big factor. You have to use death as an advisor because now you're starting to become, a free spirit and a threat to the system. And so death will guide you to make sure that you don't get taken out by predatorial parasitic forces.
Interesting. I was gonna mention another book because I'm usually so nerded out, full of my older books. There's an old metaphysical book, magic book, by Dion Fortune. She was very well known mage in like the 50s and 60s, and she wrote a book, famous book called Psychic Self-Defense.
Yeah.
And the book is mostly stories and about her experiences being attacked and going through all these experiences. But every chapter she mentions in like an old literary short story about these, and most of the stories are stories about the double, about
Mm,
other part of us. And whether it's William Wilson by Edgar Allan Poe, which is a famous double story. There's other ones she mentions, I think, by Algernon Blackwood, maybe Arthur Machen, some of those old European writers.
mm.
Um, whose stories are really magical and mystical, but really just talking about this same thing, this this dealing with the double, with this part of ourselves. And
Mm.
yeah, that one came to mind. Um, Another thing, if you could share a little more about, is especially because it's such an important aspect of the Toltec wisdom, is the stalking. Because it sounds like, the way it sounds is like you're hunting yourself in a way, or you're hunting something. So if you could elaborate on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, they refer to stalking yourself, which is to really be the observer and get to know your behaviors and really be honest with yourself about your patterns so that you can, make adjustments to the predictability. The other version of stalking, though, is that you become a connoisseur of human behavior. You observe people and you learn to behave like them so that you're adaptable in any situation.
Mm,
You're basically matching vibration so that you can get in and out of situations without any fuss. Right? So like when I go get a construction job, I'm not like this guy right now. I'm just fit the mold. I just show up and just match whoever's energy is interviewing me, and then whoever, so it's like I'm able to then just cut through any nonsense. I don't try to uphold some version of me that wants to defend or argue politics, or I just navigate it with as little energy loss as possible. And that's one version of stalking. Advanced stalking is what shamans do as a means to free themselves from their human form when they're really on in their level of psychic and intuition and have developed their dream power. They'll go look for a petty tyrant, someone who has great power over them, and put themselves in a situation that's quite difficult to see how they can use their tools to survive it without losing energy at all. So like in the books, Don Juan actually goes back
mhm.
to uh to become he put himself in a situation where he would be picked up as a basically a slave. Back in the day, Native Americans were being used as laborers,
Yes.
uh
Yeah, the Yakis, yeah.
yeah, until they died. They would just be kept on these farms or on these plantations and just be used till they died, and they'd bring another one in. And so he actually put himself back in a situation that would allow him to use all of his skills. And so he recognized the weakness of the boss, the foreman,
Mhm.
and he he let spirit guide this, but he used all of the principles of stalking, which is uh
Patience.
patience, sweetness, ruthlessness, and cunning. So he's patient and waited for spirit to show him what to do. He was sweet and kind and was able to like pretend that, like convince
Navigate
people.
socially. Yeah.
Yeah, he was able
Matches
to
the
sort of
energy.
do. Yeah. Yeah, and then that cunningness, is that just really being able to be creative enough to pull it off. And then that ruthlessness is that ability to just do what the fuck is needed to survive. It's that place of no pity where you stop feeling sorry for yourself, which is usually arrived at in an emergency. And he created that emergency by putting himself by challenging the foreman, and he pissed the foreman off so much by challenging him that the foreman came out of character and want to kill him. And Don Juan had planned on that, and he ran into the horse stalls and put up a board so that the man came in and got kicked in the head by the horse and died. And so that's a great service to the world, is to do what Don Juan did. He freed all these people by doing that, not only himself.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's like this is what they say when the European sorcerers came over here to hunt all the sorcerers in this on this continent. They were trying to take out all the powerful people. And the Toltecs didn't perish because they had learned the art of stalking. So they were able to fuck with their tyrants, or like they would convince their tyrants that they were weak and feeble, or they would make themselves appear like they were harmless. They would do whatever acting. Stalking is acting. It's controlled folly. So when you no longer have folly, you're no longer following the mold of man, you're not doing what most people do, you become a warrior, then to fit in and to act normal, you have what's called controlled folly. And controlled folly is incredibly liberating because you get to break out of your character and be in another character. And so you're getting all that extra energy from that process. And then you can make use of it to free yourself and others from tyrants. And we're going to need that. We're going to need people that are willing to be the fool so that nobody can make them the fool. Like if you're free and you're not concerned how people perceive you, all kinds of guidance will show up and allow you to do whatever is needed in a situation. And another version of stalking is, they say there's dreaming and stalking. Dreaming is being able to move your assemblage point, move your perception to somewhere really distant and explore other layers of the onion. The stalking part is being able to then fixate the assemblage point on that very position in which you just left. Because the assemblage point's chaotic. Your perception and dreaming just is going everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you learn how to isolate the dream. So once you've arrived at a dream you want to stay in, you look from object to object to object, and you keep reinforcing the world that you've arrived at. Otherwise, the dream will start to merge and it'll turn into some chaotic event where you just start to jump from dream to dream to dream. So basically, stalking is the control of isolating a particular perception and sticking with it, and dreaming is the ability to travel, to go into other worlds, and they're both necessary. But some people are naturally good at dreaming and some people are naturally good at stalking, and that's why a warrior party in the Toltec tradition is combined of a balance of both.
I want to mention when Joel was sharing the story about the petty tyrant, which is in the fourth or fifth Carlos Castaneda book. Don Juan had actually been murdered by one of those tyrants, if not that specific one, pretty much at that deathbed. And yet he had worked to a level where he could go back and meet with that person again. And kind of, in a way, you could say that he sought revenge, but that's not what it's about. It's, as you described it, it's something other. It's, he's not in battle with another person. He's in battle with himself in order to
His,
support.
his teacher his teacher told him, we cannot let this opportunity go to waste. So Don Juan was dying on the road, shot by the foreman, and it was the same foreman he went back to get caught by again, to be captured by. But the reason Don Juan became a Toltec Nawal was because his teacher was walking by or nearby when he heard the gunshot. And right when he heard the gunshot, this teacher was thinking, it's time for me to find a predecessor. And then the gunshot, and he walked over, and there's this man dying, hemorrhaging blood. And he looked at his energy field and he saw that he had the four compartments of a Nawal. And so he went quickly, moved his assemblage point by doing something energetic to him that would move him to a place where the blood would stop hemorrhaging. So we are non-physical energetic structures that experience the world as if we're just physical bodies. But if a Nawal knows what they're doing, they can intervene on someone that's dying by putting them in a deep hypnosis. Even though we're already in hypnosis, it's like a deeper level,
So I love that.
right? So he saved his life, and then he trained him for many years. And then he said, now I need you to go. Since he trained him, he said, it's time to go back and face that man as a means to free yourself from the petty tyrants for life. And so this path is very advanced. And it says that if we do not free ourselves from the chains of self-reflection, that we will join the ranks of the tyrants ourselves. We'll become offended. We'll enter our old age offended at politics or some nonsense, right? Like, it's really hard to not end up being at odds with this world unless you really get your chi back and get back to that youthful energy that was taken from us through the hypnosis program that we're in. And so these are very advanced and elaborate ways to do that. We don't need to be that extreme in this modern time. And in fact, it would almost be it's not really set up that way. But we have a totally different type, like transhumanism is our sort of version of tyranny that's coming in.
Right.
And so our ability to navigate that without losing energy, without becoming non-human, like we want to keep our humanness. And that's like the spirit of warriors is, it's not about dying, it's about not losing your spirit.
I was going to say an almost equivalent idea is when, or in that circumstance, when Don Juan was attacked and he was shot, and even building up to it, he was in the status of a victim.
Yes.
He was seeing his fate. He was seeing that he was being provocative in his own way. In his own level, he was making an attempt to keep his power in that level where he was at. And of
Yep.
course, he was going to lose because the foreman had more power over him. And he was fighting him in such a way where it wasn't as he had learned later in studying with this Nawal. And so I was going to say, one way we could look at this, perhaps in a more mundane level in our everyday, is that in a sense, our parents are our first tyrants. That's our experience of of tyrants. Controlling, keeping us down in whatever way. Like, parents have. It's not an easy for a parent to raise a child who's coming into this world with full force. They want to shut it down and contain it or frame it in some way. And
Exactly.
inevitably, it's always like a fucking hammer to a child, in some way, in a way that it's a lesson, not in a way that it's like a meant to do real harm, but more so, it's the growth. So
Mm.
then there's the understanding that when whatever happens to us, we have three basic choices in our response.
Mm.
We can become like the tyrant who's oppressed us,
Yep.
or and oppress others in that way, or we can become a victim of that tyrant and other shadows as they appear in life in
Yep.
other people, or we can become that tyrant to ourselves. It's like those are the three responses to the predators in our life, for our parents initially.
Mm-hmm.
And once we can, because I don't think it's on some level. I mean, what you're saying, of course, like the petty tyrant level that Don Juan faced is very advanced.
Yeah.
But on the level of realization that, our parents did the best they could, regardless of who they are or what they're not, they did the best they could, and their wounds is where we're here to grow. I mean, maybe even those like kind of simple, mundane statements is almost enough to let go of any hatred or resentment we're holding towards our parents. Because in holding that, we're carrying that energy over to another tyrant and giving them that power, and
Mm-hmm.
preparing for another, face-to-face battle that is revolves around the dance of the victim and the victimizer,
Mm. Totally.
instead of the dance that Don Juan was able to um, finally get into to support all around him.
Mm.
Patience, cunning, ruthlessness, and what was the fourth?
Sweetness.
Sweetness. Yeah. which corresponds to what you were saying earlier about, this is something I heard a long time ago in the Matrix books, and it's like it was saying that the most powerful, and not powerful in a power wielding way, but the most spiritual people, like actually embodied, actually holding to their spirit, are going to be just everyday looking people. They're not going to be wearing fancy full, wizards, gowns and hats, and stars and this and that shit. No, they're just going to look like an average person.
Yes.
'Cause there's no, you know, there's no need to present otherwise. Eyes that see will be able to tell who they're
Yeah.
looking.
Well, and that's another principle of stalking is that you may be the healer, but you make it look like your apprentice is the healer and you're the one sweeping the floors. You know what I mean? Like you set up these elaborate situations that
Oh,
really allows the person that's being healed to not have any idea what's actually going on. Right. And they may even talk shit to you. Like they're like yelling at you because you're cleaning the floors while they're trying to sleep. And you're like,
shit.
right. So if you're willing to be the fool, nobody can make you the fool because you're willing to play any character. And this is the freedom and the shamans are jovial and they're not trying to stand out and they're willing to appear like beggars or whatever it takes to fulfill the designs of what spirit is guiding them to do.
Did you ever watch that Akira Kurosawa film? It was based on a Shakespearean play.
Yeah,
Uh,
Ran.
Ran, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, it's so good. It's so good, right? I mean, he has what, three daughters, right? And he's like relinquishing his place as the king, and he's giving power to his daughters, and there's all these power plays and this and that. But the whole film, the whole story, his fool, his jester, is
Yes.
handling everything. Oh man, it's so amazing. And no one knows better. No one
Yeah.
knows more.
Yeah, that's so important. It's so important that we have these stories to tell us these things, and the gesture plays such an important role in keeping the kingdom and functional. Because if the king can't be made fun of, it's just everything's gonna be destroyed. So there's a possibility of having balanced systems, and that's what the Heyoka is. These people that show up and teach us things that are outside of the linear that brings the non-linear humor in that really frees people from the heaviness. Yeah.
There's just for the astrology folks listening, Pluto just went into Aquarius pretty much for good. I think it might return in September. I'm not remembering, but for the next 40 years, Pluto's going to be in Aquarius. So that's, if we look at it from the frame of the astrology chart that we all have, there's some area of our life, we don't even need to peek at it, but we all know there's some area of our life at all times where we're dying and being reborn again in. We're having
Mhm.
a kind of phoenix experience in. So we're always going through this part of ourselves that is being reborn. And the key to that, which coincides with what you've been sharing, is wherever Pluto is in your chart or even in transit, it's where you need to be the most authentic.
Oh, wow.
And through authenticity, you can you can flow through whatever challenge that comes
Mm,
because you're facing it head on as yourself without
mm,
any delusional subterfuge or delusional acceptances of yourself, and
mm.
just seeing things as they are and being ready to be seen as you are.
Yes. Beautiful.
And if there is true power, which,
Mm,
with understanding the position of the fool is in a sense a position of power because it's something that's not seen, right? It's a fool, laugh at the fool. There's no power there. But power is something that is, no one can hold power for long. It's something that moves. It's a
yeah.
force that cannot be held on to. And that's why the fool embodies that, because the fool
Hmm.
is playing in all kinds of realities. The fool is not attached to any one reality. not
Right.
attached to power in this world, so he can move about. But yeah, that was what I wanted to say is in astrology, wherever Pluto is where you have to be authentic with yourself and with others, not
Amazing.
be afraid to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, authenticity is freedom. And I think a lot of people associate financial abundance with freedom or uh, whatever, that they don't have to work a 9 to 5 as freedom or whatever. But if spirit's guiding your life, it won't necessarily be that. You might get sent in to do what you would consider a slave-like mundane task as a means to free yourself from being offended by the matrix. So true authenticity, it means that you're following your unique guidance and not trying to copy or compare yourself to anyone. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's the richness.
yeah. We all there's so many different experiences to grow from, and we're all learning different lessons. So we can't compare, which is why on another level you can be friends with any person in any field of life,
Sure.
because that's not that may be what this dream you're focused on, but that doesn't mean that your center, your spirit is that's what it is. Doesn't need to identify in that manner. Yeah, man, that's good stuff. Let's see, there was one other subject I wanted to bring up from the Source's Apprentice. Maybe a little more about the recapitulation in
Yep.
terms of we're getting our energy back from where we've left it, correct? Like all our life experiences, mostly we've left some part of our essence in these
Yep.
different experiences. And that's why the mind constantly might return to this one or to that one. And we may feel like something is left undone or unsaid. And what is the recapitulation process? What is it doing?
Mm. Yeah, brother, it's a magical act. And when one can stay in silence and return to a memory and breathe in the energy they left behind in that scene, and then breathe out the energy they took on from that scene. So it's double-sided. There's not just the energy return, it's getting anything out of your field that doesn't belong to you. And it's a very unique thing that will develop a muscle, like an energetic muscle, the more you practice it. And you'll be able to really efficiently feel your luminosity returning. So we leave little bits of our light, filaments of light in other people, especially sexual partners. We leave it in trauma situations that were traumatic, and we just leave it everywhere. Like you, you, you give your clothes away to Goodwill, but you don't take your energy back from them. Then somebody's wearing your energy.
Right, right. You have to take it back from everything. Your used car, the
Yeah.
car you got, the new used car you bought, give
Yeah.
that energy back, bring yours in. Yeah.
Yeah, so I teach people how to just practice with like a piece of clothing, put their left hand on that clothing when they're going to give it away, and just practice drawing your essence from that garment. And you'll notice it changes, something happens to it. It's no longer yours if you're successful at doing this, which is not easy at first, but once you learn the art of it, you'll start to, wow, that worked. You'll feel it. And it's quite a moment of validation of how this stuff happens. So even if you just gave all your clothes to the Goodwill and you forgot to take your energy back or didn't know about it, you can still take your energy back tonight or tomorrow or
Yeah,
whenever,
right. No time, no
30
space.
years from now. It's not it's not linear. It seems linear, but everything's timeless. And so that's what's so magical about the recapitulation is that whenever whatever stage in your life where you have enough energy to be able to do it, you can get into this unique state of perception where you can start to basically it's soul retrieval. And often you would hire a medicine man or a medicine woman to do this on your behalf, but this is doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
In the Sorcerer's Crossing, they give a very strict way of doing this. It's very old school. You start with writing a list of every person you can remember in your life. going from today all the way back to childhood. And most people give up and don't ever get involved in it because that task alone is too difficult.
Just the idea of it, yeah.
It's like overwhelming. But once you start doing it, it actually starts picking up speed and you start remembering all these names. And even if you don't remember their names, you're just like that redhead dude in 8th grade that threw the snowball at the girl. Like whatever it is, you just start picking all these people out of your memory. And that starts to build your capacity to remember. I don't practice it that way. I'll just write a list of sexual partners, family members, coworkers, and I'll just pick one thing at a time and I'll just start working through it. But then it got to the point where all these memories just started flashing. And so I just let them come and I just recapitulate as they arrive. And it's way more easy. It's less stressful. It's kind of more of an ADHD way of doing it. But it's okay because I've found lots of creative ways. And there are shamans that rather than do it so thoroughly, they just get right to the cellular level and they just purify their cells because that's what the recapitulation is doing. It's our memories are held in our cells, and when we die, all of our memories flash before our eyes, and we want to get access to that all that film footage of our memories prior to our death.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can get if we can get there, then we can recapitulate our entire life. And then the force that gave us awareness consumes that awareness at death. But it will not consume our awareness if we give it a copy of our recapitulation. It's like a pass, it's the ticket to freedom. And this is why shamans do very strange things in order to achieve the recapitulation. They'll bury themselves in the earth, they'll become hermits, they'll do all kinds of pretty extreme things to achieve this. And when it's rather than die a normal death, they die an alternative death. And in that alternative death, they get to keep their awareness, all of their memories, and all of the experience, and they glide into eternity and merge with the earth matrix. And they live as long as the earth lives. So we are very connected to the mother, and our ability to become connected to her on an in a non-linear way is available. But if we were to not achieve this, we would recycle and find ourselves in another parallel life, which isn't future or past. It's just another experience in which we could potentially achieve this again. And so, there's no reason we're going to die anyways, so we might as well recapitulate and find out what it's like to accumulate that kind of energy. Obviously, you have to, once you start building that much energy, because the recapitulation it lightens you so completely that your dreaming starts becoming really activated. So the magical passes make it possible to recapitulate because the magical passes basically gather energy that you need, resources that you need in order to focus enough to recapitulate. Once you've recapitulated significantly, you'll start to have dreaming experiences that are out of this world because you're no longer heavy and dense. Now you're light and able to travel. Then you're going to need to get so grounded to balance the fact that you're so light. And that's where your energetic internal martial art work comes in, like really being able to use those energetic roots to stay stable and connected and have an incredibly powerful structure energetically. So that's why the Toltecs teach those three things: magical passes, recapitulation, and the dreaming gates. It's a complete system. It's very ahead of its time, kind of. Where not a lot of people have the attention for it. And the Castaneda books were written to be read in order and like a manual. He was guided to share that information in the very specific way that he did so that others could use it as a template, like an abstract blueprint, as a means to erase your personal history and align with that very particular system. I don't believe that the Toltec way is the only way available to freedom. It's just the only system I've discovered that is as thorough as it is. And nobody's ever written any books like Castaneda. Everything's religious text and it's complex and it's hidden and mysterious
Yeah.
and riddled. He just explains the shit. And although it's hard to understand, that's just the resistance. That's just the flyers trying to block us from getting it. But once you kind of move past that, so the trick is not to read Castaneda when you're not feeling it. It has to be like a real it's meant to move you into heightened awareness when you read it. That's why I'm a little hesitant about people listening to it instead of reading it, because you could be having all kinds of things going on. You're not really a lot of people can't read at all. They're just their attention isn't make that available to them. But I really believe that it's beneficial, if possible, to regain the attention to be able to read the text, because it was designed to be read. One guy said that you should listen to the book and read it at the same time, which is really cool. I hadn't even thought of that. But that would keep you from having thoughts while you're reading, because you'd be hearing and reading at the same time. But Taisha's book is powerful. It's old school. You write the list. She goes into a cave. She's even given crystals that are used and helpful, which I have as well, as a means to recapitulate. Crystals are tricky. I recommend that you put any crystals that you purchase or gain, or however you get them, they want to be put through sacred fire. You want to program them so that nobody else can use them. And you want to purify them so that anybody that ever used them in the past are not still, their energy is not still associated. So it takes real work to purify crystals. It's not just putting them out in the moonlight with salt and water. There's a ritual that can be done that will make sure those crystals are programmed for you and you alone. And you don't want like your partner touching them or anything. If your crystals used to be used as weapons, people used to fight wars with crystals.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, I've heard about like using quartz crystals and being able to like merge them into your dream space.
all kinds of incredible things. So we want to respect the power of these objects if we're going to use objects, and treat them very much like, yeah, just not just sacred and not super reverent. Shamans are irreverent. They make fun of themselves and everyone. But we do take certain things seriously as far as spiritual warfare goes, and how, this is why you don't go into lodge with women that are menstruating, because that's where women tap into their power.
Yeah, that's where they open up portals.
Yeah, so or a person in sweat lodge could get everybody to the abyss if she's paying attention to her power, and people can get lost or confused or spun out. So there's some protocols and traditions for a reason, but some traditions are heavy and ritualistic to the point that they're dysfunctional and they're just trying to live in the old way. So it's discretion and discernment when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, thanks for sharing so powerfully. Wow. I mean, you broke it down and it's the truth, especially with crystals. They're beings, they're living beings. It's not something,
Magical.
you know. And then quartz crystals, that's like the bones of the earth, you know. And we
Sure.
pulled them out. We pulled them out of the earth. So, we have to respect that, that position.
Yes. This is also something that shamans do, is they go looking for their own crystals in the mountains. And then they'll harvest the crystal, and then they will invite an inorganic entity to come and touch their crystals as a means to imbue them. And that's what Carlos did in those mountains when he was waving his hand, and there was supposed to be a shadow or if he felt resistance, he was supposed to run or cover his gap, like get on his belly.
Yeah.
So there's all these different things he had to pay attention to. So like the Yeti, the Sasquatch are very real beings, and
Mhm.
they're very much involved as helpers for shamans. And so, but they will scare the shit out of you if you show up unprepared. And so you don't want to just go trying to get an ally unless you're ready. And this energetic form will come and you'll have to wrestle with an ally, and it will either take your power or you will take it. And that's how shamans learn to, they can affect their apprentices with their ally. They can find out things that are going on halfway across the world with their ally. All kinds of very unique things. And I had an elder who had many powerful allies, and some of them were his ancestors, like his aunts and uncles who had died. And they would tell him things in dream time about people halfway across the world. So there's a lot more than just being psychic. There's also assistance. Um, so crystals used to, that's how people used to use crystals, is they would go out, mine their own, put themselves in a position where an ally would touch their crystal and imbue it. And then those crystals become very, very powerful tools.
That's a lot. That's a lot you shared. Thank you so much, Joe.
Welcome, man.
Powerful.
So,
Um, any last words? We've talked for quite a while and it's been great. Any
yeah,
last
yeah.
ones you want to share?
Well, I mean, I just always enjoy our talks, brother. I'm so glad we connected. Yeah, feel free if anybody wants to reach out. I do free consults. I teach, a variety of Toltec tools for transformation, and a lot can happen in just a 30-minute consult. So it's not like a big commitment. And sometimes people just have questions or things that are unclear. And yeah, I'm available to connect with, and feel free to reach out if you're curious about joining the group Dreaming Our Purpose, which meets every Tuesday, or not every Tuesday, but a variety of Tuesdays for the next few months. And yeah, appreciate you inviting me on, Mario. Is always good, man.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. And I'll put your information in the bottom of the YouTube
Thank
and
you, man.
website and stuff. And thanks everyone. Hope you guys enjoyed. And until the next.
Awesome.